And hi, everybody. This is Joe Massaro with Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club. And we're so excited today. As you can tell, it's fall out because I have some leaves behind me. And we have an opportunity to meet somebody that I met a few months ago, virtually met, I should add, through the Speak Up Conference, which is Carol Kent's conference. And BJ Garrett, welcome so much to Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club.
Thank you so much. What an honor to join you today.
Well, I'm excited because in reading your book, I discovered that there are some themes that we share in our lives. And we'll talk about a few of those. I'll tell you when we start on the book. But as you can see behind me, that is the book. It's Unwanted No More, From Exploited to Embraced by God. And I'm looking down here because what I see is backwards. So it would be gobbledygook when I would say it. Okay. I sometimes introduce authors myself. I'm going to read just a little bit on the back of your book, and then you can just add in whatever you want to add. How's that? And
okay.
I need these to do it. And I love your picture, by the way, in the back of the book. I don't know if you guys can see. I have a green screen behind me. That's the picture. It's an amazing picture. I loved it. BJ Garrett serves as the Executive Director for Christ-Centered Abortion Recovery and Education. She holds an Associate of Divinity degree from Baptist Missionary Theological Seminary, and she has served in church ministries as a youth director, singles director, missions director, and women's ministry team leader. She and her husband, Jay, live in Texas and enjoy spending time with their children and grandchildren. You don't look like you have grandchildren, girl.
I really am very young to be a grandmother, so that is true. But yes, we do indeed have 2 grandchildren and 1 foster grandbaby. So.
Oh, that is great. So do you want to add anything about that? You know, your introduction, maybe you could tell people how they could connect with you. That might be good before we
That would be great. So probably the easiest way is just through my website. It's super easy, bjgarrett.com. And that you can contact me through there for speaking opportunities or for, book release type things. And yeah, that's what I do. Everything in there is, it's so funny when they start working on all of these descriptive things for you. It's so intimidating because it sounds awesome, but I'm just a plain old country girl from East Texas, living my life, loving Jesus, and thankful for what God's done in my life, and thankful to get to serve in a ministry that helps so many men and women. And specifically what I get to do with that is help men and women who have been hurt by abortion in their past. So, yeah.
And that's something that I can relate to in my life, and we'll talk about that. So why, before we start about the book, you dedicated it to someone, and then why now would you write this book?
Oh, goodness. Well, I dedicate the book to my sister because she is my very best friend, and she was there for me for all of my life. She tried to protect me as much as another little girl can protect another little girl can.
Sure.
And she's been my biggest supporter through this whole process. And so, yeah, that's why I dedicate it to her, because she's my sister, and I love her.
And so why now? This book just came out this year, right?
Yes. So all I can say is God's timing is perfect. I knew for well over a decade that I was supposed to write the book. I knew that the Lord had instructed me to write the book, and I would go in full force, and I want to be obedient, and I'm going to do this. And really, I thought, honestly, that I would just probably self-publish through Amazon, and no one would ever know. And I could just mark off my little check box of, being obedient to the Lord and be good. But he had a different plan for that. I almost got wrapped up in with a vanity publisher several years ago. That would have been a nightmare. I had a ghostwriter that tried to come alongside me to help me write my story, and nothing was a good fit for me. And then all of a sudden I'm at this speakers conference, and I get introduced to Athena D. Holtz, who is publisher through Redemption Press. And it was just the right fit. And so very rapidly, from the time that I met her in March of 2019, the book was then released December of 2019. So all I can say was God's timing was finally perfect. And lots of tears were shed, lots of turmoil fought in those few months, but it happened very rapidly once I got connected to the right people.
It's so true. You know, one of the things you're talking about is writers' conferences, and those have dramatically changed my life as well.
Yeah.
I had walked in 4 years ago to Carol Ken Speak Up conference all by myself, never having been to a conference before.
Yeah.
And I was petrified, but I went. And God just over the years has just opened up door after door after door. And it's always in his timing. I so agree.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you open your book and talk about a story that you like to retell about your grandson,
Yes.
Aiden.
Aiden,
I
yes.
have a grandson, Aiden, exactly spelled the same way.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, he's so funny because he'll tell people like the book is about me. That's what he tells people. The book's about me. And because I acknowledge my granddaughter in the end, she's like it's about her also. So they think that the book is all about them, although they're not allowed to read it just yet.
Yeah.
They're pretty certain that it's all about them, and that's all that matters to little ones.
So tell a little bit of that story that happened to him on the day he was born, because there's
Yes.
something I want to bring up when I read it.
Okay, so actually it was right after he was born. It was during the hurricane, and we had gone there, all of our power was out. We'd had massive storm damage. And so when he was released from the hospital with my daughter, there's no power. So we have to, feed our family. So we end up at Red Lobster for all you can eat shrimp. And sadly, I'm so sad to say that this year is the first year in 12 years that they've not had all you can eat shrimp, at least in our Texas. So yeah, we are eating all you can eat shrimp. And every year I just like to remind him of the significance of this story because powerful storm, blew in, but this precious, perfect little boy was just kind of the just amazing piece in our family that we welcomed home. And so, yeah.
So I heard there were some Yankee fans in there as well.
Yes. So that part of the story is actually from my own story. I was told most of my life that there was this big baseball event on the day that I was born.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of clung to that for just kind of a silly thing, but year after year, I'm told about this event, this big baseball doubleheader, and that, I waited for my debut to come into the world and all of this stuff. Well, as I began to write, and I just started Googling one day. I'm like, I'm going to find out about this big event. And I would search and nothing. And then I searched and then nothing. And every time I searched, I would change the way I would word it. But this big event, not as it had been described to me, was coming up. And Joe, it was just so crazy because in that moment, it was just like all of a sudden, I had no validation of my life. And it seems so bizarre, like now even repeating it, because it was such a minor thing. Mm-hmm. It was an event, but it didn't happen just like it was set, like it had said on my birthday. But somehow I had so validated my existence on this big event that hadn't happened. And it was life-shattering to me. I mean, I just was like, my husband was sitting on the couch beside me, and he was like, he could tell like my countenance had changed. And he was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, nothing. I can't talk about it. And it just, I don't know. It was just like all of my identity had shattered in this tiny, tiny lack of validation of an event that didn't happen the way I had thought it had happened on the day that I was born. So
you lived in a place, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Is it
Cattaraugus? Yes.
Cattaraugus, New York. Well, guess what? I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but I lived all of my life until 6 years ago in New York State.
Oh, wow.
And I was born in the Bronx, but I lived in Schenectady, which is by Albany. And that is where we moved from. So I actually wanted to see how far away you had been from me. And it was like 315 miles.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Isn't it a small world?
It is. It is. Let's talk a little bit about your book and share a little bit about maybe your childhood.
My childhood was not real pretty. I'll just, I mean, the title of the book probably gives that away. I kind of grew up feeling very unwanted. I was in and out of, I mean, I say foster homes, but really it was mostly family members that took care of me, including my biological dad for different seasons of my life. I had an uncle and an aunt and another uncle that had kept me for a while. And um, and those were safe times that I was with, loved ones. But unfortunately, when I was with my mom, my biological mom, she was not a very healthy individual, and she allowed a lot of things to happen to me. She was very, I don't know how to, so like, first off, kind of spoiler alert, I love my mom. And she's gone to be with the Lord now. I do believe she's in heaven. I believe she made some true repentance before the end of her life, and I truly believe she's with the Lord. But that doesn't excuse the behavior that she had while I was growing up. And I mean, ultimately, I was the payment often for goods, whether it was a roof over our head or maybe groceries, a light bill, or something to that nature. And so she just allowed men to have access to me for whatever the need was. She would also kind of take me and cart me along to different churches to kind of be the little ragamuffin, dirty and hungry, which I often was, dirty and hungry. And there wasn't an act I had to portray. It was real. And then that's how we got churches to help us for, again, groceries, food, utility bills, and that kind of thing. Yep. And unfortunately, she was also, it's not funny, but I kind of joke, she wasn't a very good thief, though she was well practiced at it, but she got caught a lot. So she would steal from stores, but then she would also go to jail often. So she was in jail a lot, in and out of my life. And then we would, again, go and stay with family members, kind of get some normalcy. And then mom would get out of jail and I would go back home to her. So that was kind of my upbringing.
So was it just you and your sister?
It was just me and my sister. I do have 3 brothers that are from my biological father, but I don't know them. And I know that I have met at least one of them because there was an old picture, but I don't know them. They were adopted by another man at some point. And even when my biological father passed away, I had thought I would try to maybe find them, but he didn't even know their last names once they had been changed and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, so it was just me and my sister growing up.
Okay. So at some point, Andy comes into your life.
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit about that?
Oh, Andy, he was a bad boy. And when you grow up with, I learned really young that intimacy in your body is how you get things. And so we were very, very young, and we became intimate at a very young age. And, my dad said, you can't date him. And that was like full stream ahead. Yes, because you said, no, I'm going to show you that I can. Mm-hmm. My dad was one of my abusers growing up, and he thought it was his role to teach me about men and intimacy. And so I thought, how dare you? You want to do these things to me. You want to teach me about men. So how dare you not allow me to date this guy? So the fact that my father disapproved put him way at the top of my list of, great catches.
Like me.
Yes. And he was young. He was striving himself to please an unpleasable father. And we were just young, Joe. I mean, there's really no excuses. We were young and thought we were in love, and it was survival, really. He rescued me out of my home. So I don't know how much you want to share about him, but he had
share whatever you want to share. It's
not funny, but I kind of joke that like he was this great catch. He had no job, no ambition, no education, but he was like this great catch. But the reality is that he was just a young guy, you know, trying desperately to live his life as well. And, you know, our relationship was doomed from the beginning, really. But he wasn't all bad either. We were just young kids. Yeah, just young kids. And I got pregnant at 14. And so he was 18, and you know, he again didn't work, and he didn't come home at night. So here I was, by the time I had my daughter, I was 15, and it was just really survival at that point. So you talk about, I look like I'm too young to be a grandmother. I am too young to be a grandmother, but I was really too young to be a mom.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but I was.
But you were. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's kind of move a little bit forward to, I think it's Joe.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Joe. He actually, you know, he was the first guy, I would say, that gave me sincere attention. And he, I thought, more than just for my body. I thought that he truly loved me. He had all the things, like he had a job and a car and a house. I had, you know, I had landed the big one, right?
I hate it.
Yes, and he was so kind to my daughter, and my I was actually still married. I had married Andy. We were very much married, but we didn't live together as husband and wife after 4 months of marriage. Though we would actually be married for over 10 years, we didn't live together as husband and wife that whole time. And so with Joe, I was just in love. I was so infatuated. And it's kind of silly, but he said that I had nice eyebrows. And like, I mean, that was like such a sincere compliment. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have good eyebrows. Like, I don't even know, why is that even a thing, right? But it wasn't about my body or anything like that. It was like, for me, very sincere. And I was just absolutely in love with this man. I would have done anything for him. And he loved my daughter. And so I thought again that, wow, with all, I mean, like I was infatuated. And unfortunately, I got pregnant by him. And I was so excited. Like I was so happy, and I couldn't wait. I mean, I loved being a mom. And again, this was so different. Like I was a little bit older, not much, mind you. I'm still a baby. But this time, you know, this guy has a car and a job and a house, and I think all the things that make him great. So when I come to him ecstatic that we're going to have this baby, I find out that he doesn't want to be a dad. And that is when I had my first abortion.
You know, when I read that, I could so associate with abortion because I have had an abortion. And I had mine back in 1970, let me just think for a second, 1973.
Yeah.
And when I was married, had children, my husband didn't want another child. I went to have an abortion. I was really not counseled in any which way, shape, or form. And I had the abortion. And then 9 months later, my son died in an accident the day before his second birthday. And he died the day before his second birthday. So I was devastated, not knew of God, knew of Jesus, but certainly did not serve him like I do today.
Yeah.
And I felt that God had punished me for that. And it took me many years to recognize that that is not the God that I know today.
Yeah.
But it was devastating. And we'll talk more about that as we get to what you do today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's and we're skipping on some things, but you really need to read the book. Let me just say this, because there is so much in there. So in order for you to get the entire story, please get the book and read it. You eventually now meet Jay.
Yes. Oh, he is the coolest thing. Let me tell you, he's just the coolest guy. And he was always cool. Like I've actually known him for a long time. So his sister and my sister were best friends in high school.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there was always this kind of, like, we knew each other. My mom and his mom were friends. And so there was just always, our families were friends. And so I knew him, and he was kind of that bad boy image too, you know, like I would here in East Texas when I was young, you used to go to the mall and like just hang out, and people would walk the mall and all the
Oh,
teenagers
yeah.
go and, you know, do that kind of thing. And I remember my sister worked at this little photo lab, and I would go to work with her. And I would sit like over this little corner and I would watch, like, oh my gosh, there goes Jay, you know? And like he was just, I don't know, this elusive creature of, you know, I don't know, handsomeness, but
And we did do that, didn't we?
we did. Yes, we were so silly, but that was real.
Yes.
And so here I am. I'm at my sister's best friend's wedding, and my date had stood me up. And of course, Jay was there. And I hadn't seen him in a few years. I thought, oh my goodness, he's like grown up. He's a man now, you know? And so we started talking, and just, he was living in Austin, Texas at that time, and I was still here in Tyler. And we just started talking and corresponding through phone, and we didn't have cell phones yet at that time. So it was, I would go to a pay phone and talk to him. And then about a year later, he actually kind of just moved in with me. I'm not promoting that at all. We were not Christians.
Yep.
That was just where we were at. And so, and I used to get tickled because he would say he lived in Austin, Texas, but he's just staying here. And I'm like, you live here. Like, quit saying that you live here. But anyways, we were just in love, you know, young and silly and living life. And I ended up pregnant again. And so, and by this point, as you know, Joe, I've already had 2 abortions. I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I don't even know what to do. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't do this again. I knew I couldn't have an abortion, just because of the trauma that it causes. But I had not had the best luck with men in getting pregnant either, clearly. And so I was just devastated. I was just bawling my eyes out, and he comes home from work, and he's like, sees me, and I'm like ugly crying, and I'm not one of those pretty little dainty,
Yeah, me either.
you know, damsel in distress kind of things. That's not me. And I mean, he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm pregnant. And he was so ecstatic, and he starts jumping on the bed, and he's like, I'm going to be a dad. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? You've lost your mind. Within like 3 minutes, he had called everybody he knows. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a dad. And I'm like, it was just a home pregnancy test. We might need to confirm this before you start telling everybody. But sure enough, he was ecstatic to be a dad. He did not respond how I had been responded to in the past with pregnancies. And I don't know, we were about 2 months into that, I think. And he says one day, he says, let's get married. And I said, okay. And so we went and got our marriage license. And a few days later, we got married at his grandparents' house.
I guess that permanently meant that he was going to be living there.
Yeah, he finally moved in.
Oh my gosh. So there comes, because we're going to fast forward, there comes a time when obviously your life begins to change, and you begin to meet some people who help, that I believe God puts in your path.
Yeah.
And so grateful for that. There's so much of this in the book, so you just share whatever it is you want to share, and then I want you to talk about the dream.
Sure. So what's really important is that for all of our lives, we would have thought we were Christians. We both, even though we live very worldly lives, we both very much would have said we were believers in Jesus Christ. We knew all the right answers. We had this head knowledge of who God was and who Jesus was. But truly in our hearts, we were not believers. And we definitely didn't live a life of believers. And so I ended up working at this little teeny tiny tea room in Bullard, Texas. and it was owned by Christian people. And girl, I'm telling you, it was crazy. It was like going into the Twilight Zone for me because I had lived a very worldly life.
Yep.
And I went from actually working in a club on Friday night to serving tea and little chicken salad sandwiches to little old ladies on Tuesday morning. And Christian music was always playing, and like all of the customers that come in, they would all come in and they would just pray over their little chicken salad sandwiches, and they would use a knife and fork to eat it with. And I'm like, oh my gracious, what's wrong? Is the sandwich just like this? Just pick it up. But no, very dainty.
Yes.
And not what I was used to. And these people that owned this restaurant, this little tea room, just loved me. They just began to love me. Mm-hmm. And they would also pray. Like, we would always have lunch after the restaurant closed at 2. And so we'd kind of have a late lunch together. And I would sit down just being a heathen and just like, you know, being me. And I would just start eating. And then one of them would say, well, hey, let's bless our food. And so I would stop, but they never judged me. They didn't say like, oh, you know, ragamuffin, you know, whatever. They just loved me. And they didn't ask about my past. Really, they just loved me. It's like they didn't care where I had come from. They just cared that I was here. And for the first time in my life, their love didn't cost me anything. And that was so foreign to me, because always love and affection had cost me something. And it was usually my body is what it usually cost. And so they eventually invited me to church, and I thought, oh, great, here we go. Because I had some pretty ugly experiences with the church, and I talk about some of them in the book. And I thought, I'm not going to be a part of this. I didn't even want to go back to work. And so I lied, and I was like, well, of course, how come? I'd love to come to church, knowing full well I'm not going. And so Sunday comes around, I didn't go to church, and we were closed on Mondays. And so I showed back up on Tuesday. Honestly, Joe, I didn't even want to go to work. I wanted to just not ever go back again. Mm-hmm. Thought now they're going to hate me because they're going to know, like, I'm going to be this big exposed liar, you know, or whatever. And I show up, and because the pull for me was, if I don't go to work here on Tuesday, I've got to go back to the club on Wednesday. And I could not go back to the club. I had to be done with that season. And so I go back to work on Tuesday, head hung low, prepared for the worst. And they just loved me. Like, they didn't say, well, why didn't you come to church, you big fat liar, you know? And yep. They just loved me. And I mean, in fact, nobody mentioned it, you know? And then I think at one point, somebody might say, we missed you Sunday, maybe you can come another time. And then that was it. Well, kind of fast forward a little bit, there's an October, you know, kind of fall festival thing. And they said, hey, you know, we're having this event tonight. You ought to come and bring Alex. Alex was almost 3. And I thought, you know what, I think I might actually do that. And so, and ironically, this is how cool God is it was almost right across the street from my house, this little country church. And because God knew he had to get me close.
Yes. Get there.
I wasn't going to go more than 2 minutes across the street to find him. So he got me there. And I mean, I get there, and there's this group of people just like the ones I was working for, and they just love Jesus. And there was no hidden agendas. And I mean, it was just fantastic. And for the first time, I truly saw Jesus in the flesh. I mean, these people just loved God, and they loved me like God loved me. And I was addicted. I was like, okay, I'm in. And so I began to go to church, and eventually gave my life to the Lord through that. So, yeah.
I love that so much. There is such an incredible lesson in there for us as Christians, because it's so easy to judge somebody by the way they look or the way they sound, or, oh, they didn't show up for church, I invited them, well, I'm done with them, you know. It's just absolutely incredible when I think about how much God wants to do. And if we would just allow him to work through us and to take all the other things out,
yeah,
and to look at people with his eyes.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you imagine what we could do as Christians?
Yeah, we would make a much bigger impact. And they did. I mean, they changed my life. Mm-hmm. And truly, I mean, I still love them dearly today. I mean, they are the reason that I know the Lord. They're the reason that my husband knows the Lord, because
Yeah.
it's long after I give my life to Christ that my husband follows suit. And now all three of our children have also made professions of faith in Jesus Christ. And I mean, God has been very, very good.
So let's talk a little bit now about, you call it your call to ministry,
Mhm.
and where God pulls you in and what you've done in some of those things now.
Oh, the call into ministry. I was still working at the tea room. And really, I mean, this sounds probably bizarre, but I probably would have retired from there. Like, I loved it so much. I had worked in restaurants a lot throughout my life, especially as a young, single mom. And so I had lots of experience, and I'd always hated it. I hated that I was good at that. Well, for the first time, like, I began to appreciate that I was good at it, because I was good. And I turns out that acts of service is a huge piece of me, and that the Lord had given me this gift that I love to serve. And so when I felt the Lord calling me into full-time ministry, I knew I was going to have to quit my job at the tea room, and it broke my heart.
Mhm.
And I mean, we were so broke, and I mean, I didn't make a lot of money anyways working in a tea room, I assure you, but it made no earthly sense to quit a job to do ministry that you don't get paid to do, really. And but I just knew, and praise the Lord, my husband is always right there with me, and we had prayed about it. We knew we were in agreement that this is what God wanted. And so I went into full-time ministry, serving initially as student minister at our church. I'm like, I don't even like teenagers. Why would God do this? Like, teenagers are the worst, right? I'm just kidding. They're really not. But it was, like, I would, if I could choose, it would be a much more glamorous ministry role. It would not be student ministry. And so I began working in student ministry and absolutely loved it. And Satan, he was so crafty, because he's like, because again, like, I have all these secrets that nobody knows about at this point. They don't know about my abuse, and they don't know about the abortions or adultery or any of these things that were in the past. And so Satan was just so crafty. Like, why would they want you to teach their kids? If they knew the truth of who you were, they would never let you even step foot in this church. And so I constantly have these lies being, well, I mean, there was some truth to them, of the lies of Satan, just constantly coming at me. And really and truly, for a long time, even my husband didn't know about a lot of the things from my past. And so there came a point where I had to just kind of tell him everything. And girl, that was hard, because it was like, I just knew if my husband finds out that he's married me, and he finds out about all of the ugly things that I have done, or all of the ugly things that were done to me, he'll leave. Like, why would he stay? I was disgusting. And so when that day came and I had to tell him everything, it was awful. Again, not a graceful crier, I'm not the sweet little damsel in distress. It was awful. And but I knew I had to come to a point where it was either God is enough or he's not. And I could no longer cling to the idea that my husband's going to stay with me with these lies. And so he came home from work, and I just kind of word vomited everything out and told him everything. And really with the idea that he was going to pack up and leave. And I had to be okay with that, and that the Lord Jesus was going to be my provider and my protector, and that he was enough for me. And praise the Lord, that's not what happened. I mean, that all of that is still true. He is all that is needed, but my husband just loved me and embraced me, and God really, I don't think that I recognized that our marriage needed healing at that point, but God absolutely healed our marriage. And we have been going strong now. And we just celebrated 22 years a few months ago.
That is awesome. This is another thread for me of my life in your life, because
Oh, wow.
I was married to my first husband for 10 years, and that is the husband
Wow.
of all of my 5 children. And during the time when I had the abortion and my son died, I got married again, and after 2 months, he decided to leave because he didn't want to be married to somebody with 4 children. I'm still not saved. I'm still not following God. And then somebody brings into my husband comes into my life, my current husband right now, and we've been married 28 years.
Wow.
And he brought me into a relationship with the Lord. And it was the start of the change of my life.
Yeah.
And I am forever, ever grateful that, God put us together. So I totally and completely get what you're saying, girl.
Yeah. It's awesome. God is so good. And I just learned that he doesn't waste anything. He doesn't waste any of the ugly. And one thing that I say often is that no matter what you have done to yourself or what has been done to you, there is hope and healing in Jesus Christ. And that's what I live every single day, because I could tell you, we could sit here for hours and I could talk about all of the bad things that happened to me, because there was a lot of bad things, and I had some bad cards dealt to me, and I made, there was some common responses to my life choices, but the reality is that I did a lot of damage to myself.
Yep.
And sure, I can go back and like thinking about my first abortion. I remember very specifically a scene when my biological father was in a drunken stupor, spitting in my face, telling me he wished I had never been born. And so when I'm faced with this man who I love, Camaro guy, that has a job and a house and a car and all of the things, and he doesn't want this baby, all I can think is there's no way I'm going to bring this baby into a world to feel the way I had felt my whole life of being unwanted. And so, sure, I can go back to that scene and remember that. But the truth is I chose abortion.
Yep.
That was my choice. And no, he didn't want the baby. And the counseling session was a joke. It was not a counseling session. She used all of my own fears against me, convincing me that I was doing the right thing because no one should bring an unwanted baby into this world. But I was his mother. I'm the one that made that choice. And then I am now the one that has to live with that every day. And so anyways, I can go back and I can blame lots of ugly stuff on the people that did ugly things to me. But the reality is I made a lot of ugly choices myself.
Right here too. Let's talk about what you're doing today.
I've
been waiting for this part.
I beg people to ask me what I'm doing because it is such an honor. I work for Christ-centered abortion recovery and education. And what I get to do every single day is help men and women who have had abortions in their past get the hope and healing from Jesus Christ. And what we do is it's just a Bible study. It's not like this very elaborate program. It's a very intense, very specific Bible study where we lead women with women and men with men and women who have had abortions in their past. And maybe you didn't have the abortion, but your best friend did, or maybe your daughter did, and you drove your daughter to the abortion clinic, or you encouraged or forced your young child to have an abortion. Then our program works for that as well. And it's just a very intense Bible study where we deal with the wound left over from abortion. And, as good Jesus lovers, we know that he paid for our sins on the cross, and we know that. But something about the woman or the man who has chosen abortion, it's like we believe that for you, and we believe that for her and her and her. But for some reason, it's really hard for us to accept forgiveness in that area, especially for those of us like myself and you, and we were not Christians when we had our abortions. For some reason, it's easier for us to believe that, because when we get saved and we give our hearts to the Lord, like, we accept all of it. But for those many, many women who have chosen abortion when they know the Lord, they have the hardest time receiving that forgiveness. But the truth is that he, long before they chose abortion, long before they chose any ugly thing they've ever done, he died for them. And so he had already paid for that price. We just have to receive it and acknowledge who he is in our lives. And so I get to walk through that path of forgiveness, receiving forgiveness, and acknowledging the life of those children that were lost. Our world says so often that, well, just get over it. It's no big deal. It was my body, my choice. Move on. Life goes on. But that's not real. And
Right.
if there's any other loss in this world, we're given time off from work to grieve, but most of us that chose abortion, we're right back to work within days without ever telling a soul even about the experience that we had just had of losing our child. And so we give them a safe place to hurt, to be angry, to heal, to receive forgiveness, and to acknowledge the life of their unborn child that was lost to abortion. And it is fantastic.
Well, I was just thinking when you were talking, I was, I was 23 when I had, 22 when I had that abortion. And I am actually in 2 days turning 70.
Wow.
So it was really probably 10 years ago that I started to share that I actually had an abortion.
Yeah.
And so this is why I wanted to talk to you today, because I so believe that there is hope, and for all of us who have had abortions. And the program that you're talking about, I actually went through that when I lived in Schenectady, New York.
Wow.
And it was a 3 or 4 day retreat.
Yeah.
And at the very end, they said to us, if you believe God is giving you a name for the child that you aborted, let us know. And they, obviously not right then and there, but
Yeah.
Star came to me immediately. And so I
Wow.
really believe that the child that I aborted was Star. That was a girl.
Oh, I love that.
And so I have thought about my son who passed away and the child that I aborted, Star, and that one day I will be with both of them again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love it. So what would you say to somebody, because this is really important to both of us, what would you say to somebody who is contemplating an abortion?
Wow. First off, I would say is that for whatever reason that you would even consider abortion, those reasons are valid. Like it's scary. A
Mm-hmm.
child does change your life. It does.
Absolutely.
And there isn't a quick fix to that. But I can promise you that abortion is also not the quick fix. And they are not going to tell you how every time you hear the sound of a vacuum cleaner, that you're going to be reminded of that moment that you lose your child to abortion, or every time that you see the bright lights of that office, that you're going to be reminded. And I guess my biggest hope for you, if you are facing an unplanned pregnancy, or even a pregnancy just for whatever reason that you're choosing, that you're contemplating abortion, is I promise you, this is not the quick fix that you think it is. You cannot walk away from choosing abortion unharmed. You can't. And most of us spend decades of self-sabotage after choosing abortion, because you cannot deal with the grief and the loss and all that comes along with abortion that they do not tell you about. They do not tell you the truth. And I promise you, there are resources out there, whether you are going to choose to parent this baby or not. There are options out there that do not include abortion, and there are resources out there. There is no such thing as an unwanted baby, and you may feel like your baby is unwanted right now because of your life circumstances, but I promise you, somebody wants that baby desperately, and there is hope and help available to you. Please don't choose abortion. It's not the quick fix that you're anticipating.
Amen to that. Now, if somebody says, I need a website or a phone number, or where could they go?
Absolutely. So you can reach us, and we actually get calls nationwide, but our website is careabortionrecovery.com. And again, also through my personal website, which is bjgarrett.com. You can contact me either way. But careabortionrecovery.com is the abortion recovery ministry, and we help men and women with real resources to choose life. And it's not because we just care about this baby. One of my biggest pet peeves in the pro-life movement is that it's all about the baby, and the babies are important, and I am about saving babies' lives. Don't get me wrong, I am. That's big. But I want to protect this woman from the consequences of abortion that I so desperately know intimately how it's going to affect her, that I want to protect her from experiencing that abortion, which then saves her baby's life as well. And so, again, they can contact us through careabortionrecovery.com. The office number is 903-944-7852. And so either way they can reach us, of course, through social media, Facebook and that kind of thing also.
So I guess just one question, maybe two, because, I never, I may have two. How is your family doing today?
Oh, my family is awesome. So my daughter, the one that I had when I was 15 for 5 days when I became a mom. She is precious. She's now 30. She has 2 children of her own, and she is a foster mom. And so we have had one foster baby that has been reunited with her family that has come and gone. And now we have another foster baby that she is loving, and I'm hoping that he will get to go home to his biological mom, hopefully within the next year. My son is, the Lord is still writing his testimony, and I'm holding on to that truth. But he's doing well. We have a great relationship. And my baby, who is now 21, just graduated from phlebotomy school. And so she is a certified phlebotomist, which totally freaks me out because I hate needles and blood and all of that.
Let me show you something. I don't know if you can see this. This is from somebody taking.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
I could have used it.
Well, she's pretty good at it, actually. She actually just practicing took my sister-in-law's blood the other day. And I mean, it was just like that. Didn't hurt her at all. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at my baby. And she's like doing this grown-up thing. So that's really awesome. My husband he's just, I don't know. He's not perfect because he's a human, but he's as close as they come. He is the best husband, the best father, loves our grandkids, and he just works full time. He's a gunsmith, and we're in the heart of East Texas, where every home has lots of guns. And so he stays really busy, fixing people's guns and hunters and that kind of thing. And then of course our grandkids, they're just amazing. Aiden and Annabelle, and love being a Nana. I'm a Nana. This is my, I don't know if you can see, but this is their little blanket. That's their sweet little faces right there. Love being a Nana. So.
Well, not only do we have something in common or things in common, my husband and your husband definitely would as well. So I guess to close, is there something that you feel like God is leading you to next, or is there something on what you might call a bucket list that you would like to do, or anything on your radar in those respects?
I love sharing my story publicly. I love speaking, and which is kind of really, if you know me, I like to be behind the scenes more often than center stage. But for some reason, when it comes to speaking to audiences, I love being on that stage and just sharing what Jesus has done in my life. And so I love to do that, women's conferences, anything like that. I don't know if there's another book in my future. When I was in the process of writing this book, I thought, never, but I'm not opposed to the idea. I don't know what it would be necessarily, but I'm wide open to what God has to do. We love serving on the mission field. We love serving in Africa and Cuba. Those are 2 of our hot spots that are, really close to our hearts. And, I don't know, we're kind of in this season. Our baby is grown, like I said, she's 21, and I came into our marriage with 2 kids. And so we're at the first time of our lives where we get to just be husband and wife some of the time. And so that's a whole new season for us. And I don't know what God has for us right now, but we're wide open to whatever he has in store. And we're just gonna, hopefully say, yes, Lord, and do whatever he calls us to do.
Well, I'll just say this. Here's another thread between you and me, because my heart is to build libraries in Africa and other
Oh,
places.
wow. Wow.
And I just really believe that God has put this on my heart for many, many years, and it's kind of come up again. And I have started small by having the month of October, this month right now, as a month of In Their Hands. And it's a Facebook page, and every day an author is reading to children their books,
I
giving
love
away
that.
copies and printable, downloadable things, activity things, and just all kinds of fun. And I said, God, I'll just, that's what you gave me. I'll start small, but I believe that God is working to bring me to places to build. And it may just be one room library. It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah.
But I really believe that God is going to bring me to some places. So I'm
I
going to be
love
praying
that.
for you if you would pray for what God
I
wants to
will.
do.
You know, my daughter works, my oldest daughter, Ashley, she works in adult literacy. And so a big part of what they do is give books away to underprivileged homes that can't afford, you know,
Sure.
books themselves. And so absolutely, I love that so much. So
Well,
yeah.
see, we really need to get together. You're in Texas, I'm in Indiana.
Yeah,
So somehow
yeah.
that's got to work out.
Absolutely. I'm about it. Let's do it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. You can see
Man,
her book behind me, BJ Garrett. It's a must read. You absolutely have to get this story. It would make a really good movie, by the way, too. I'm just putting that out there, okay?
you know, Hallmark, give me a call. Let's work out a plan.
So thank you again. Again, I'm Joe Massaro with Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, and I am also joemassaroministries.com. It's a new website that just came up, just getting everything up there. You will find your video up there shortly, and check it out. Every day, like I said, something new is being added because it takes time to get everything there. So thank you again for being with us, and don't forget, Jesus loves you, and he's available 24/7.
That's right.
Thank
Thank you.
you.